Welcome to this explainer. Over the next 7 minutes or so, we're going to build a really wholesome, complete understanding of a super modern internet phenomenon. We're talking about brain rot. We'll break down exactly where this phrase came from, what people actually mean when they say it, and why it absolutely matters in terms of how digital media is shaping our attention today. Let's get right into it. Okay, so let's set the stage by addressing the absolute most obvious question right off the bat. When you hear the term brain rot, it sounds pretty terrifying, right? Like you're suffering some sort of permanent cognitive damage. But we have to ask, is it actually destroying your brain cells, or is it pointing to something entirely different about the content we're constantly consuming? You've probably heard the term used playfully. Someone will say, look, I know this is brain rot, but I just can't stop watching. They're basically admitting guilt without actually rejecting the content they're consuming. And honestly, a lot of internet language works exactly like this. It's kind of a joke, but it's also a diagnosis of the joke at the exact same time. People are using it everywhere right now, from commenting on endless meme pages to just describing really low-effort, absurd posts. Section 1. Decoding the slang. So, here is the absolutely crucial point to remember. This phrase, it is not a medical diagnosis, and it's not even just a generic way to describe bad content. Rather, it's a shared cultural label. It's a reaction to severe content overload. The phrase spread like wildfire because it finally gave people a quick, really sharp way to put a name to a very specific modern feeling. That creeping sense that an endless stream of low-value digital content is just leaving your attention completely scattered. And I think this breakdown brilliantly illustrates the difference. We're definitely not talking about a clinical condition here or some permanent drop in your intelligence. A person can be incredibly smart and still find themselves falling down a rabbit hole of content that feels like brain rot. Actually, think of it like standing in a room full of incredibly loud background noise. That noise doesn't change who you are, it doesn't make you less smart, but man, it makes clear, deep thinking so much harder while it's playing. Brain rot is just our cultural shorthand for that noisy, fragmented condition of the mind in the moment. Section 2. The empty calories loop. A really helpful way to visualize this feeling of mental cheapness is to think of it like snacking on empty calories. The content you're scrolling through might be super stimulating and genuinely enjoyable in the immediate moment, but afterward, it leaves you feeling intellectually thin. It's that weird feeling of being mentally fed, but not really nourished. It perfectly describes that massive mismatch between how much of your daily attention something demands and how incredibly little it actually gives back to you. Now, what's super interesting here is the analogy of a pop song hook. Look, one silly post is just a silly post. On its own, it's totally fine. But the digital system doesn't just give you one. It keeps delivering similar content one after another until your attention gets stuck in this repetitive groove. Much like a catchy song hook that eventually gets stuck in your head and becomes hard to escape, the problem isn't the single note. The problem is the loop. Section 3. The architecture of feeds. It's incredibly tempting to just write this off and say, well, people are just lazy, and that's why this stuff spreads. But frankly, that is way too simple. We really have to ask the bigger question. Why do digital platforms consistently elevate and reward this specific type of media over deeper, more enriching content? Well, it's because the platforms intentionally reward what we call low-friction content. You see, when we're tired or anxious or just mentally overloaded from a long day, our brains naturally gravitate toward things that offer immediate clarity, easy amusement, and super low-cost engagement. This content isn't winning because it's objectively the best. It's winning because it's simply the easiest thing to continue engaging with during our weakest moments. Think of your attention like a literal spotlight. Whatever that spotlight hits becomes clear, and everything else in the background just fades away. Short-form media basically acts like a machine handing out tiny, instantaneous treats, constantly forcing you to shift that spotlight around. And over time, your expectation of pace completely changes. Focusing on anything deep becomes a whole lot harder, and your tolerance for boredom drops dramatically, all because you've been trained to expect a shiny new reward every 3 seconds. Which brings us to this brilliant concept, the hallway of mirrors. When you're scrolling, you really feel like you're voluntarily swiping. You feel like you're making free choices. But in reality, the system is designed so that every single choice is made in a context where the exact next option is already queued up and waiting for you. It's essentially guiding you through hundreds of tiny yeses just to keep you moving blindly down a path it built. So looking at this mechanism, you can see exactly how the digital environment is completely optimized for this. Step 1, your attention is captured. Step 2, incredibly fast rewards arrive. Step 3, that rapid repetition becomes your new normal. And finally, step 4, you develop a strong preference for the novelty of the next hit over any sort of sustained focus. It's basically a bargain. You get instant stimulation, for sure, but you give up the continuity of your own attention. Section 4. Changing our minds. Because an environment that trains our attention ultimately changes us, right? When low-friction content becomes your default setting, quiet actually starts to feel unbearably slow. Reading something with depth feels super demanding. And more than that, our actual taste is subtly conditioned by this constant engineered repetition. When your environment keeps rewarding the exact same fast pacing and the exact same emotional intensity, your sense of what is genuinely funny or interesting gradually adjusts to match it. But here is the silver lining to all of this. The real beauty of the whole brain rot joke is the self-awareness hiding right underneath it. When we take a step back and actively ask ourselves, wait, why is this so hard to put down? We stop just blindly consuming. In that moment, we create a healthy, necessary distance between ourselves and the feed. We realize, oh, I'm being pulled by a system. And this brings us to a really durable, wholesome understanding, which is the real win here. You are no longer just looking at some passing internet slang. You are actively using cultural literacy to diagnose the media environment around you. You can now spot the difference between your own personal preference and engineered repetition, and that is huge. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder as you log off today. Now that you can clearly see the architecture of this digital hallway of mirrors, how will knowing these mechanics change the way you scroll tomorrow? Are you driving your attention, or is the feed? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.